The Eastern Conference has been pretty unpredictable this season. With a lot of injuries hitting star players in the East near the end of the season last year, it's knocked a lot of championship prospects down to fringe play-in contenders. Or in the case of the Indiana Pacers going from the finals to now having one of the worst records in the entire league. However, this is probably exactly where the franchise is wanting to be. 2 days before Game 6 of the NBA Finals last year, the Pacers shipped off their pick in the 2025 draft and former G League player Mojave King to the Pelicans so they could get back their own 2026 first-round pick, which to a lot of people seemed like a really odd move to do, focusing on the offseason while you're in the NBA Finals, but this turned out to be an act of amazing foresight, or maybe something else. As I'm sure everyone watching this video is aware of, Tyrese Haliburton would unfortunately injure his Achilles, ultimately making it a foregone conclusion that running it back to the finals next year was pretty much out of the question. So getting that 2026 pick back is absolutely massive and could end up leading to one of the greatest tank jobs we've seen since the Spurs landed Tim Duncan, then won the championship 2 years later. And I'm going to break down why you should not forget about the Indiana Pacers going into next year. Throughout the late 2010s, the Pacers were always one of the teams in playoff contention, but for 6 consecutive seasons, they'd just get knocked out in the first round, getting swept 4 out of those 6 times, which may have led fans now to doubt this most recent iteration of the Pacers for the past couple of seasons when they actually would push past the first round. And truthfully, there are a bit of similarities between this team and the ones during the late 2010s. Since becoming GM in 2017, Chad Buchanan's vision of the team hasn't really faltered. Knowing that Indiana was never really going to be a dream destination for star players, there was a focus on going after younger talent that they could plug into the lineups and test the fit. The emergence of Domantas Sabonis left them with a kind of fork in the road moment. It was clear that the team that they were building was supposed to be geared more toward Victor Oladipo than it was Sabonis. But even with Sabonis, Oladipo, Malcolm Brogdon, and Caris LeVert all averaging over 20 points per game, the Pacers failed to make the playoffs. The following year is when the Pacers decided to do a mini rebuild, shipping Sabonis off to the Kings and getting back Buddy Hield, Tristan Thompson, and most importantly, Tyrese Haliburton. For the first 2 years with the team, they didn't find a whole lot of success other than Haliburton getting his first All-Star selection. However, in the 2023-24 season, the Pacers exploded onto the scene, going from a team that finished out the season with a record of 35-47 to then flipping their record to 47-35. The Pacers did pick up Pascal Siakam near the end of the season, but the biggest reason for their success was really just the team starting to find an actual identity behind Tyrese Haliburton. In fact, after picking up Siakam, there was a bit of a worry as the team would just barely go above 500 in the games that he played in. But heading into the playoffs that year, that didn't slow them down whatsoever, starting the series with a win in a massive upset over the Milwaukee Bucks, carrying that momentum over to upsetting the Knicks in 7 games, and then carrying that momentum over to, well, getting swept by the Celtics. But even after upsetting the Bucks and the Knicks, the Pacers weren't getting the respect that they should from around the league. During that championship run, one of the knocks against the Celtics was that they had a pretty easy run to the finals, with many people using the Pacers being their Eastern Conference matchup as an example of that. Of course, as we know now, the Pacers being there was no fluke, and going into the next season, the Pacers would once again knock off the Knicks and the Bucks, but unfortunately they didn't match up with, and therefore couldn't get their revenge on the Boston Celtics. Either way, they were still able to march their way to the finals, proving people wrong with each series, with Tyrese Haliburton quickly becoming a fan favorite, dropping back-to-back-to-back clutch buckets to keep the Pacers moving forward. And suddenly, the team found themselves matched up in the finals against the OKC Thunder. Leading up to that series, it had almost seemed as though the Thunder might just be unbeatable. With an MVP candidate in SGA and the top-rated defense in the entire league, they were able to knock off fellow MVP Nikola Jokic in 7 games. And then they would go on to make short work of a Timberwolves team that some people thought might also be able to at least wear down the Thunder. But the T-Wolves would end up losing in 5. So now all that stood between the Thunder and the Larry O'Brien were the Pacers. A team no one really expected to be there, and also coming from the conference that is historically weaker. So naturally, not too many people thought this was going to be a very competitive finals. After game 1 though, it was starting to become clear that this series was going to be much more than just a walk in the park for the Thunder, as Tyrese Haliburton continued his streak of getting at least one clutch bucket a series, securing a massive win in game 1. This momentum didn't slow down for the Pacers whatsoever, ultimately forcing the series to a game 7, and throughout those games this was definitely the most another team had made the Thunder sweat. And as a true testament to the greatness of this team, for a brief moment it had seemed actually conceivable that the Pacers could pull out one more upset on the biggest stage against a team that hadn't lost more than 2 games in a row all year. But again, as everyone knows, this would only end with Tyrese's unfortunate injury that is still keeping him sidelined going into this season. But I also did mention at the beginning that the Pacers were able to get their first round pick back right before this happened, which would have cost them a lot more than Mojave King and a late first round pick if they tried to make that trade just 5 days later. The team was also projected to be over the first apron of the salary cap, and if they would have re-signed Myles Turner, then they most likely would have been over the second for a team that wasn't going to make the playoffs. So they decided to let him go in free agency, which has the added benefit of also making them that much more prepared to tank. So with the Pacers currently sitting at second last in the East, and this upcoming draft class supposed to be better than usual, we could be witnessing the 2020s version of the Tim Duncan draft, where a team can essentially sneak their way into a top draft pick while still being a championship contender. In the case of the Spurs, they went from the 2nd seed in the West down to the 3rd worst record in the entire league, all spurred on by David Robinson's consecutive injuries that resulted in him playing only 6 games, followed up by a multitude of other players missing significant time, which sounds more than a little familiar to the Pacers this year. Of course, the Spurs would go on to essentially start their dynasty with this one single season, while skyrocketing to one of the league's premier franchises. It's way too early to suggest that the exact same thing is going to happen to Indy, but in the modern era, we've yet to see a team this talented suffer so many injuries that we can all but guarantee will sort itself out by the start of next year. As I've kind of alluded to though, the Pacers aren't exactly the same team as the one who made it to the finals last year, and that could make fans hesitant. Myles Turner's in Milwaukee, and Bennedict Mathurin is a free agent at the end of this year. But truthfully, none of that is really going to be an issue. I don't see a world in which Mathurin doesn't re-sign with the team, and other than him, every other major piece is locked up till at least 2027. And if the team does want to make moves, they still have room to wiggle with their salary cap under the 1st and 2nd aprons. As for Myles Turner, him ending up in the Bucks might low-key be a blessing in disguise, as it's not like he was a massive contributor in the playoffs last year, especially during the last 2 rounds when the Pacers were debatably at their best. So as long as they can fill whatever impact Myles Turner had on the games during their playoff run last year, which I don't think is going to be too hard to do, the team that will be running it back for the 2026-27 season is going to relatively be the same one that ran to the Eastern Conference last year. Obviously, we don't know what the conference is going to look like even in 6 months from now, let alone next year. But as it stands right now, I don't see too many teams in better positions for the near future than the Indiana Pacers. Now, I would be doing a disservice if I didn't finish off this video by mentioning the Thunder one last time. Like the Pacers, the Thunder could sneak their way into a top draft pick as well, thanks to the poverty franchise that is the LA Clippers. Even if they don't, the Thunder look like a team that are going to be here for quite a few years to come. But if this plan can work out for the Pacers, we could be witnessing the very beginning of this generation's LeBron-Steph rivalry from SGA and Haliburton.